Welcome back, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us again on Hey Docs. Amy, so great to have you on the show today.
Thank you so much, Jill. Always great being with you.
Yes, I have been looking forward to this. And I know you've had an opportunity to join us a couple times now, one of my favorite returning guests. But in the event that somebody does not know who you are or does not know about you, would you mind just real quickly giving us a little synopsis on who you are and what you do in our industry? And then I'd also love for you to talk a little bit about what you have been doing since the last time we did our podcast.
Oh, glad to do so. I am an engineer turned communication coach. That's it in a brief synopsis. So I am a mechanical engineer by background, but also a homeschooling mom, inventor, because I have 56 US patents in my name from my time at Bank of America. Also, a wife to an orthodontist who has worked every admin role. And then I have now turned into a consulting role, especially with a deep niche in communication for scheduling coordinators, doctors, clinicians, treatment coordinators.
Yes, and I cannot thank you enough for the work that you do in this space. As when in my company, we do a lot of the baseline training for all the areas, but I think it is so wonderful to have consultants out there that specialize
Mm-hmm.
in certain parts of the practice, especially when you're past, okay, I've got a newbie who now they understand what they're doing, but we're trying to take it to the next level. And I know you just do such a good job with that. So thank you for holding that space.
You're welcome. And the second half of that question you asked me about is what have we been doing since then?
Hmm.
I believe since the last time I was on, I took my book and it is now an Audible. So I had to record my book and I did that. And the other new way out there is I am in trapezial. So the phone course in trapezial is based off my work.
Oh, I
Mhm.
love that. That's great. So let's dive in. I want to, on our last podcast, we didn't get to talk much about your book because it was brand new out. So I
Mhm.
would love it if we could dive in a little bit. And I think communication in our industry is, as we both know, so important, but it is also really changing. And the way we communicate with patients maybe the way we want to, especially if we're a little bit more old school, and the way patients want to be communicated
Mm.
with. I feel sometimes we're running into some obstacles out there with that. And you have definitely been leading the charge, I think, in really getting us good standards for what we should be thinking about and doing. So I would love it if let's talk about the book, but then I also want to, lead us down the road of communication and what are we seeing that's new out there and what should we be on the lookout for in our
Mm.
offices?
One of the things I always like to go to is sometimes people want straight up scripts. And I believe there are points and places for scripts, but
Mhm.
I also want to talk about structure. Because if you have a structure and a framework, that allows personality to shine through. And it's going to make sure that we get the branded message across without sounding robotic.
Mhm.
So consider it like building a house. So sometimes the structure is a foundation, walls, a roof. And then that then we flourish it and we decorate it to our style. And so that gives us the freedom. So when I'm teaching, I'm trying to make sure I give you the foundation and then we embellish it and make it to your style and your branding. So those are the foundation of what I do so that even though you're going to probably notice a flavor and a style if people have used me, but it's not going to sound identical from.
I always say within my company, we don't take a cookie cutter approach
Mhm.
to what we do. And I know you're the same way. It's not,
Mhm.
and I don't think that we need to be. I think that there needs, like you said, I love the idea of thinking about it like structure. There needs to be some important parts that are consistent in what we
Mhm.
are doing, but it's got to feel like your practice and it's got to feel like the experience that you're wanting the patients to get out of that communication experience.
Exactly. And I have also found as I work with individuals, if you give them a framework to work in and they feel like they haven't lost themselves, we gain greater cooperation as
Hmm.
well. And because what does this knowledge do if nothing is implemented and nothing's executed? Doesn't do any good.
So let's talk a little bit about if we're a newer practice, let's say, and
Mm,
I know I've got a lot of younger doctors that are listening and maybe even younger team members. What do you think right now, 2023, 24, are some of the key things that we should be paying attention to in how we are communicating with our patients? Maybe from a new patient phone call or text or email to follow up and on. Would you mind
mm.
unpacking that a little bit for us?
Sure. Let's dive in. I think we have to be aware of our audience.
Mm,
So think about it. Our audience is not the same as it was decades ago,
mhm.
not even years ago. The pre-COVID mom and the post-COVID mom are at a different space. And so we have to be willing to keep adapting. So let's take like the new patient call.
Mhm.
The call and the sheets and the forms we may have used years ago may become aggravating to your current patient. They have less time, less attention
Yes.
span, and they tend to get flustered and angry earlier. So, in concept, think about one thing. Do you have to ask every single question for every single field that's in your software now? Or are you going to be able to find it out later on your
Yes.
forms or in your discussions in a more natural way? Because my biggest thing is, I don't want you interrogating.
Mm.
Think about a first date. If you showed up at a first date and you're like, I have a few questions for you. Ready? It's this and this. And they're like, can I talk? Nope. Nope. We've got about 10 more questions to go. And that is one of the most common things. And you're like, oh, I've heard when you hear two sides of the conversation, I hear people go, all right. And you're
Yes.
like, or they'll say, I'm not the one having the appointment. It's for my child because you are just, you're just getting really stuck in the weeds of those
Mhm.
things and you're annoying them. So do you need to know that now, or are you going to ask it again later? So, knowing the timing of how much to ask and when is a key factor, and a consideration of your audience is changing.
Yes. Oh, and I think that's such good insight. And even for me, being in this industry for so long, and you've been in it for a long time too, I think
Mhm,
sometimes it can be so easy for us to get caught up, especially for a few of us that have been doing this for a while, where it's this works. Let's just try it and it's true and it works. And we need to get all this information.
mhm,
And I think the biggest thing as I look forward at consumers becoming patients in our practices
mhm.
is that they are looking for something different and
Yeah.
they're looking for us almost more in our offices. You tell me what you think, but I feel like they're looking for us to meet their needs
Mhm.
instead of us looking for the patients to meet our needs in the practice. Yeah, and I think that as we are moving forward and looking at what does orthodontics and communication look like, I think there are changes that all of us are having to make if we want to continue to communicate well with patients, potential patients coming into our practice, and then the ones that are even there as well.
Yeah, and it means that we're adapting sometimes our processes. Think about the attention span of our patients. They're coming through us through a lead form,
Mm.
and they have enough interest that they want to know, how much is this going to cost? How much is it going to be? And we talked about those virtual exams that we really got into during the COVID era. Just because we're now in person, we don't necessarily want to extract those. But I also feel that the level of interest of some of those people who are filling out a form or responding to a sale ad, their interest level is smaller. They're
Mhm.
curiosity seekers, not necessarily treatment seekers. And so we need to adapt our process. We did such a huge favor when we took that 3 or 4 step process to go from initial exam to start and
Yes.
bundle it into same day starts, which is a wonderful thing. But those were really great for treatment seekers. Curiosity seekers, we need to make it easy for them to get that tidbit of information. And so maybe we need to step it back and unbundle that process, do a screening, which can be done virtually quickly, and we can even discuss what payment arrangements would look like in a down payment and in monthlies. That works for you? Yes. And then take a next step of, okay, now we'll come in and we'll finish. And then we can tell you everything else. And so doesn't mean we're giving less treatment. We're just breaking apart the steps to match their modality and their speed. So curiosity seekers and treatment seekers are two different things.
I love it. I love this concept. What a just exactly where our industry is going. What it's just the difference in our patients
Mhm.
coming through our doors. And a lot of times even our marketing that we're doing is going to attract different patients. And
Mhm.
I love what you're saying there. That there is a difference in what they're looking for. So
Mhm.
let's talk a little bit about if you were talking to a practice and practice was saying, "Hey, Amy, I think we just need to improve a little bit on our communication
Mhm.
skills." And maybe it has to do with our front desk, but it also has to do with maybe our clinical team as well or whatnot. What's some advice that you would give offices if they're coming and saying, "I just feel like we're falling flat. We're just not hitting where we need to hit." Where would you tell them to start?
I would say let's start with a polite factor. How are we showing and demonstrating polite, which another industry expert, Vanessa Van Edwards, speaks about as warmth. Or if you look in the 50 years of studies of good communication has warmth and competence. And so an easy thing is lead with the warmth and making sure we're doing that well. Meaning, we see TikTok farce ones of how we go and even ask for a patient in the waiting room and we've mispronounced our names and oh my goodness, and we're not smiling and it's
Mm,
come on back here. So it's how do we welcome them and exit them when they're there in a politeness and using warmth? And how do we do that on the phone? Because it's a first impression and a last impression. And that's what people tend to remember, first and last, and then highs and lows. So why not make sure that first and last impression of a visit and a call is done well? And clinically, then when you're sitting in there, how do you try to prompt conversation there?
mm.
It at least prompt it. They may not take you up on it, but don't leave them idle and sitting there by themselves.
Yeah. Oh, such good insight there. Now, I'm going to throw you a little curveball.
Mm.
How do you make written communication more personable?
Ooh, yeah, yes. So here's the thing: you've also got to adapt to make sure in politeness, it could just be, hey, it's Amy from wherever I'm at. But you've also got to realize that different modes of communication require different amounts of length, or you're going to upset them
Yeah.
there. So you got to think when you're in text, you've got to speak in phrases.
Mm.
When you're on email, you can do paragraph length. And if you're doing an infomercial, you can speak to more. So it's adapting the mode of communication to the length and the style that you're speaking.
Yes.
Because in text you can use an emoji, and
Mm.
that's your warmth
Yes,
there.
yes, yes. I think that is so true. And I just feel like we are not hitting on that enough any right now. But I do believe that in all of our practices, I think we could all agree that phone calls are less, text and emails are more right
Mm,
now in how patients are communicating. And one of the things that I advocate for, and I'm sure you probably do as well, is there has to still be training on how do we communicate through text and how
yes.
do we communicate through emails. And I think sometimes we're like, oh, I've got this younger employee and they've grown up on text and emails, but they haven't grown up on proper spelling and some of the things that we have to remember that there's still an extension of professionalism
Mhm.
that has to come through, but friendly, but still has to come through that. And I'm wondering if you've got some tips on that. I don't know if it's scripting, some pre-scripted things that
Uh,
you suggest offices use. Would you mind going over that a little bit?
sure thing, because you're right. Just because we're on text doesn't mean that you text a patient like they're your BFF. It's making sure you are not using acronyms that they're not going to understand, and you can still drop in phrases. So let's use an example. Somebody texts the office and they say something is broken and I need fixing it. Hey, it's Amy. Glad to help. Could you
Yes.
please send a picture of that? And that doesn't mean it's got full sentences, but you've still put in that warmth there, that
Hmm.
politeness. Glad to help with that. What we would do next is, And see, there's guiding and there's that competence that we would have you send a picture in or whatever your protocol is. There are still these structure components that we
Yes.
can apply. They're just shortened or lengthened depending on the modality.
Yes, I love that. And anything different you do with an email versus a
You have chance for fuller sentences
mhm,
there. So it's
mhm.
going to be more similar to that, but you can complete your thought in full sentences or into a paragraph format.
Yeah. Yeah.
Otherwise, it's going to be very similar.
Yeah. And this kind of gets me thinking every office has different ways of texting and whatnot.
Mm,
But I've got to assume that a two-way text where text is coming from the doctor's office from the same phone number has got
mm.
to just help with continuity. Would you agree with that?
You mean continuity as to we can still keep the conversation going?
Yes.
Mm.
Yes.
One of the things that's an advantage to a parent or a patient is, hey, I can continue this conversation almost while I'm doing something else. So
Mhm.
it doesn't feel as interruptive to them. And for us in the office, those, because they're usually shorter, means that we can almost do it in between taking care of patients who are walking up or that phone call as well. We understand that it's not a continuous conversation. It's almost staccato. Hey, what do you got? Oh, respond back. And we understand we've got a little more time frame while we're taking care of something else.
Yes, it's everybody appreciates or can understand the pause because
Yes.
we're all used to that. Like in a conversation, if we were to say something and then not say something, we're like, there is a problem here. But if on a text, we send something out and then we get back to them 5 minutes later because maybe a patient walked up to
Mhm.
us in front of us, it's accepted. It's like that doesn't feel weird. It doesn't feel rude.
Now the magic is knowing when do you need to change the modality? Because there
Mhm.
does sometimes come a point where this is not, we're not connecting and we need to switch modality. We need to go to voice. We do need to go to that phone
Yes.
call or setting up a time to discuss it in office. So that's that business acumen of knowing when.
Yes. And I think that kind of leads me into my next question of where do offices run into missteps with communication? And
Mm,
I think you said it right. We have to know, okay, maybe this tone, maybe there's something more here going on. Maybe we
mm.
do need to take this to a phone call, take this to a Zoom meeting, whatever that is. But can you talk a little bit about I don't know, just some red flags that offices may run into when they're starting to maybe see it go from pleasant to problematic. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Surely can, because I have found, and I have people say it, that after post COVID, it's like people are on the edge and they get tripped up and it starts going south a lot
Yeah.
easier. And it's not necessarily that we're doing anything differently. Let's talk a basis. It's almost like post COVID, everyone's tolerance level was we have a bucket and we, if it, once it spills over and bubbles over, that's where trouble is. And people don't have a margin. And
Mhm.
so they're right there at the tip top, and it only takes one little thing to have them spewing into something else. And so this propensity means that sometimes front desk team members, especially on the phone, are getting more people who are agitated at them. That then comes into a red flag moment. What tends to happen is people don't handle that as well because that's not every phone call. And so we don't have the practice. Thankfully, we don't want to have the practice, but we need to be ready.
Mm.
What I find is people aren't listening and they're interrupting and they're justifying, and it just sends it south, or they're trying to stay on that call. So it's not knowing when to say when, especially when we've got somebody frustrated, because there are times when it's right to punt.
Yeah.
There are, I'm going to pull this up here. When I work with clients and I take it to shows, I actually have an acronym for when we have somebody upset, and the acronym's ALERT. ALERT, knowing how to apologize or acknowledge, L for listen, E for empathize, R for resolve, and L, thanking
Mm.
them. But the
Yes.
first thing that you have to do is listen. Don't interrupt that upset caller, because if you do, it's just adding fuel to that fire.
Yeah.
Or don't let the first thing back at it say, I said. You've got to say, I can understand how that's frustrating, and
Hmm.
then work on it. And don't just keep repeating as if you're speaking to somebody who's deaf and you just keep getting louder and more emphasis. It's not going to go well. Sometimes you need to punt and say, I want to make sure I get you to the best answer possible. With your permission, I would like to speak to whatever that extra person is that they feel like they're getting to the next level, and I'd like to get back to you within 24 hours, whatever your time frame is.
Great.
Get yourself some time and space.
Hmm.
So I want you to
Yeah.
think time and space.
Yep. So I want you to just say that one more time. Go through alert again one more time.
All right. A is for acknowledge or apologize.
Hmm.
L is for listen. E is for empathize. R is for resolve. T is for thank. The
Yes.
T may seem a little bit odd, but I want you to think about if they've brought an issue to your attention and you've been able to resolve it, not every time, but you may be able to get in there and say, thank you for letting us know. Because sometimes it could have been on us.
Yes.
And instead of going online, they brought it to you. And that's
Hmm.
actually a gift in surprise for you if you will take it that way, as
Yes.
opposed to having to handle a 1-star review somewhere else.
Yep.
They brought
Yep.
it to you. They might
Yep.
not have brought it well to you, but they did bring it to you.
Yeah, and I cannot agree with you more on that. And it's something small, but gosh, I can tell you from when I used to work in offices and working with so many doctors teams, yes, we don't necessarily like to hear that things aren't going well as a business owner, as a doctor. It's a pinch. It's a pinch for all of us.
Mhm.
But gosh, I'll tell you, I would rather know that there's a problem and then as a business owner or as an office manager, be able to take some time and fix it, address it with my team. Sometimes sometimes we grow with our mistakes, right? And sometimes those pinch learning opportunities are really learning opportunities for us to do better. I really love that and think that is just so easy to remember, but yet it's exactly what we need to be thinking about when we are communicating, especially when we're in maybe those more tense situations.
It's true. And think about how much these days that we've various consultants have talked about outsourcing things. And so there's
Mhm.
and then we're bolting onto our practice management system different products and services. And every time there's a touch point, there could be a gap that we're unaware of. Because so many times
Absolutely.
we don't go through that user interface experience, not unintentionally, but there could be something that's broken or behaving in a way we didn't know. And so it is a gift when they let us know. And so we need to be aware of it, that the more we've got bolted on, the more outsourcing we're doing. Those are all places of potential gaps. And
Yes,
it could be an
yes.
experience that we didn't intend.
Yeah. Oh, you're so right in this. And again, why I just love talking to you because I feel like you are the communication master. And this is definitely an area for all of us that we always have to be striving to do better at. And like you said, especially when you think about potentially outsourcing somebody
Mhm.
else's company, even though they're part of our company, may not, there's always a potential for a breakdown. And
Absolutely.
well, that's great. Let's, as we are finishing it up here, I'd love it if you would, if you had two or three pearls that you
Mm,
would leave our audience with as they're looking into this next year and
mm.
saying, hey, here are some things that I would encourage you to really be paying attention to, or some things that maybe if you guys are in a team meeting and you're looking at things to update or upgrade or whatnot, I would suggest. Can you talk a little bit about that with communication in mind?
Absolutely. Well, number one, especially with our abilities these days that we have voice VoIP phone systems, you need to be recording your calls. In
Mm,
this even litigious society, and he said, she said, record your calls. Even if you do not use a consultant coach, it's for your own protection. So
yes.
do that. Just go there.
Yep.
And
Yep.
even these days from an HR perspective, What are your teams saying? You've got a means to be able to get back to that. It's a data point you need to know. So that for sure. Let's think of another one is you need to be meeting regular, thinking of leaders with your team members. They need to know what your impressions are and
Mm.
not doing that in front of the group.
Mhm.
You need to be having those times where you're having those touch points. I'm not saying it has to be weekly or even monthly, but it's something that you can know that you can count on. You when I even think of this from any relationship perspective, no relationship is going to be sunny skies all the time. They're just not. I mean, you're married, we're married, we know
Yeah.
that. But if, like, even with myself and my husband, we have a weekly meeting where we touch base, and something may have bothered me earlier in the week. And I know, okay, we have a set time to discuss this. And
Mhm.
so I can actually put it aside and move forward knowing I can discuss it later. And a lot of times, by the time I get time and space, that's the second time we've used that phrase today. By the time I get there, it's almost all it's a non-issue.
Yes.
So have times to meet regularly with your teammates because I want to set up some of these foundational components to help you out.
Yeah. Oh, such sage advice.
Thank
So,
you.
Amy, if somebody wants to find out more about you, find out how you can help their team, what's the best way that they can learn more about your company, about what
Mhm.
you do? How do they get in contact with you?
Sure. So the website is communicateexcellence.com. And even going back to that alert acronym, if you go to the phone page of a Work With Me, there is a free handout about that alert principle. So go
Love
grab
it.
one of those. The other way to really get to know my style and teaching and seeing if we're fit in our communication styles, go to my YouTube channel, which is Communicate Excellence. There are several videos out there from that perspective.
Wonderful. What a great resource. Amy, it has been just an absolute pleasure once again to have you on the show. And I know I will have you on again because we cannot talk enough about communication, right? We cannot.
Exactly. We just hit these little segments and we'll just keep the series going.
Absolutely. Absolutely. As I like to finish up my show with a little question and answer. And because you've done this a couple times, I thought we would switch it up a bit and
Mhm.
let's just talk a little bit about maybe some charities that you are involved in and are supporting. I think everybody would love to find out a little bit more about that.
Thank you for asking. 10% of all sales, I'm top of line sales, I actually pay it forward into other industries. And these are ones that have helped me. So things that are helping others. Primary one, is called PEO, Philanthropic Education Organization. And here's the cool thing about them. I pulled up their fact sheet. So there's over 5,000 chapters in the US, but these are just women helping other women. We have in our many years of existence, $415 million money to go help other women in their
Wow.
education.
Wow.
There are actually some people that you know who are also PEO sisters to me. Amy Schmidt from Ortho 2 is a
Mm.
PEO sister. Rosemary Bray is a PEO sister. So it's one of those impactful organizations. My other top one it's called Cycle for Survival. And this is the cool thing about this organization is 100% of the money raised goes for funding and research to help rare cancers. And as a rare cancer survivor, I am getting ready for my third year of being an extreme rider where I go ride 4 hours, spin for 4 hours straight. And so that I put funds in that direction as
Oh.
well. And I have a few other more, but 10% of all my sales goes to other organizations to help
Oh,
others.
Amy, what a big heart. And I love that. And I think as owners, we have to, I know a lot of times we all don't talk about it a lot. And I don't think
Mm,
that we necessarily need to build like that needs to be the first thing we talk about. But
mm,
I definitely believe in the philosophy of paying it forward and everybody is going to have their own charity. For anybody that's listening, I would just say, I would encourage you to look into the charities that Amy's just talked about. But if you are a business owner, there should be a portion of your business that goes beyond you
Yes.
and goes to help other people, whatever it is, whether it's through your church, whether it's through your community. I feel like that is just a way for us to give back. And Amy, I'm just super excited that you're doing that, and that anybody who's working with you can have an opportunity to know that there's a little bit of that's going to the betterment of somebody else.
Absolutely. And if you go on my website, I've got pictures of the organizations and they do link out to those organizations. Like another one is Shriners Hospital, because I had two boys who had club feet and they were
Mm,
treated by Shriners Hospital. And so I want to, they helped me. So I want to help them
yes.
back as well.
Yes. I love that. Amy, thank you so much for being on Hey Docs once again. Such a pleasure. You're a dear friend of mine. And
Uh,
I know that anybody who takes the time to contact you and use you in their office is definitely going to come away a better practice for sure.
oh, thanks, Jill. Always great being with you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. All right. Until next time.
Bye bye.